outdoor adventures.
Greetings all, Chuke here from Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Well, it's no secret I'm a big fan of the 45 ACP, and I've recently become even more enamored with it. I'm also obsessed with HK firearms. This is my HK full-size USP 45. Now, I just tested some law enforcement plus P ammo in this thing, and I was completely blown away. That's what I'm carrying now in this. In a couple weeks, I'll have that test out. I couldn't believe what it was getting on the chronograph. But I got email from a viewer, and I want to thank Dan in Alaska for this email. Remember, you can always email me bear stories, 10mm 45 ACP stories at chukesoutdoor@outlook.com. But I wanted to read this email because I really appreciate it. This is Dan in Alaska. I liked your video from 6 months ago about handguns versus bears. Just chiming in, you had a lot of Wyoming incidents in there. As a born and raised Alaskan, I recall one incident on Kodiak, forgot when an 88-year-old shot an elk and fought off a grizzly bear with a Swiss Army knife. I love it. Here's an interesting one. It was interesting to me at the time because it was right after firearms were allowed in Denali National Park, and it's the only grizzly bear defense killing there was to date, this with 9 rounds of ACP, 45 ACP. Not a handgun, but a ranger friend told me of an 800-pound sow grizzly stopped on a charge from 20 yards by 17 shots from an AK-74 at McHugh Creek Trail around 2014. Now, I thought that was the Russian River Trail because I remember that story too. That guy got in big trouble for that. At the time, I found it interesting choice for a brush gun and a good excuse to send a letter to Senator Feinstein that we do have a practical use for high cap mags or just general capacity mags. Good video, keep on trucking. Dan from Alaska. Dan, I really appreciate that, and I do remember that story in Denali National Park from 2010. That was right around the time where I had started this channel. I've referenced that story several times, but I never got this much detail about the story. Now, this is the first instance of a hiker killing a grizzly bear in the park wilderness, that specific park. Other parks it's happened before, but I do want to say that you can drive 40 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes, and you get onto the Denali Highway from that area, and there's been several instances of brown bears, or actually grizzly bears, because when you get into the interior, it's a grizzly bear killed with 45 ACP. One was a few years ago, and I forgot the details, but I remember the detail of the Matsu Valley one a few years ago. Brown bear was getting into a guy's trash in the Matsu Valley. It was a homeowner. He got sick of it, and he shot the brown bear with 7 rounds from his 45 ACP from his balcony. He just stepped out onto his balcony and shot it, and he did kill it. And I always wondered what handgun they used, because a lot of times they won't say in these articles. I read it in the newspaper, and I like to think it was a 1911 because it was 7 rounds and he discharged the fire. Typically a 1911 will hold 7 rounds, but it does not say what handgun this guy used. But let's just go through the article. This is what we know. So I read this in the newspaper, but this is from a magazine article from the National Parks Traveler, May 31st, 2010, and it's titled "Grizzly Bear Shot and Killed by Hikers in Denali National Park and Preserve." And it is noted at that time you were not allowed to carry firearms in the national park there. Now you can. I mean, it was shortly in February of 2010, Congress changed the rules and it was now legal to carry. You just cannot discharge in the park itself. Because I was wondering about that myself. I was there 3 years ago, and I had a firearm, but is it legal to carry here? And then I saw these guys just open carrying in the park, and I was like, okay, it's fine. So they expanded the national park portion of the Denali, which was expanded by 2/3 in 1980, and it is now legal to carry in all areas, but just not discharge. So 2 backpackers were hiking in dense brush along the edge of Tatler Creek at the west end of Igloo Canyon, 35 miles from the park, headquarters. So it was a man and a woman. They were both backpackers. They were not hunters. And the man was in the lead. Now, it's always terrifying in thick brush. They talk about thick brush. When I go through thick brush, if it's in bear territory in the summer, I just draw my firearm and have it at the ready, because when a bear senses you, a lot of times if they decide they're going to attack you, they sneak around, they quarter around you, and they make sure they're downwind, and then they charge about 35 miles an hour straight at your side and just go through trees. You hear the trees crackling and popping, and a lot of times you don't even have time to get 1 or 2 shots off. That's why I agonize between revolver and semi-auto. But the article says this guy had a .45 ACP semi-automatic handgun. Now, we'll get into what happened, but he fired 9 shots. Now, it does not say what pistol he had, but that makes me, I'd like to think it was a Glock, because he had 9 rounds. Typically, you won't hold that much in a single stack 1911 unless you've got some of those magazine extensions, which some people do, so it could have been a 1911. I'd like to think, and I want to say I read the article that it was a Glock too in a newspaper article, but this article, all it says was a semi-automatic handgun. Now, one good thing the guy did is he was in the lead. He was walking in front of the woman. He had the firearm, and then they heard some movement, and so he drew the firearm, drew the pistol, and this was a charge. Now, I don't know if it was a false charge or not, because a lot of times these brown bears and grizzly bears will test you. They will do a false charge and stop, false charge and stop. The black bears like to nip at you a little bit to see what you'll do, if they could possibly be injured, but you just never know, and you can't really take any chances. So it said that the grizzly bear was running at them. It wasn't just kind of loping around. I've had bears do that, just kind of slowly walk towards me, and you fire a shot and then they run off if you're lucky. But this bear was running at them. So he fired 9 shots. The bear turned around and went into the brush. And that's what I remember reading from the newspaper article back then. It was in the Anchorage Daily News. And so they left. They didn't follow the bear, which was good. It walked off into the brush. They went back. Park rangers closed the trails. It was a big deal. And then later on, they found the bear, and it was roughly 100 feet from where the pistol casings were. So it traveled 100 feet, fell over, and died. And that's what I remember from the newspaper article. Now, I think this is a great testament to the .45 ACP. I know I've been working with Dean Weingarten with ammoland.com, and if you have stories about bear defensive encounters with pistols, please email them to me so I can forward them to Dean, because he's got this database he's doing, and it's amazing, some of these stories. Another story he personally told me was about a guy with a .45 ACP. There was actually a guide, another guy, and the guy's son, and they all had different rounds. I think one guy had a 10 millimeter, one had like a 44 Magnum. But anyways, they all unloaded on this charging bear, and they stopped it within 5 feet of reaching him. But what I didn't read in the original article, and I got this from Dean because he interviewed the guy's son was a competition shooter, and he had one of his competition pistols on him, which was .45 ACP. So I'm guessing that he was just on target, bam, 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 getting a bunch of shots in center mass. He had hollow points too, which isn't the greatest for a charging bear, because you're not going to get as much penetration, but I'm guessing he was getting all of his shots center mass in the head, probably had time to reload and keep firing because he was a competition shooter, and he probably shot best out of all those guys. But they killed the charging brown bear dead. Within 5 feet, it dropped, and one of the pistols, the guy's son, had a .45 ACP. So this guy killed the brown bear with 9 rounds, .45 ACP. I wish I knew what ammo he was using. I'm guessing it was a Glock, but of course I could be wrong. But it's just a testament to the power of the .45 ACP. I can't wait to release the video that shows what kind of foot-pounds of energy I got out of this thing, and it's only got a 4.5-inch barrel. So .45 ACP is a big diameter. I'm a big 10 millimeter fan. That's no secret, but I'm kind of leaning towards some of the .45 caliber rounds, especially with 460 rolling and things like that, or even a 45 with a 6-inch barrel or more, you're getting incredible power. So I believe in the 45 ACP. I love hearing stories like this. It's kind of heartening. So everybody stay safe, carry when you're out in the woods, and you know, you may need to save your life someday. So please email me any stories you have. Stay safe, guys. It's Chuke, your friend in the field.
My name is Chuke. I like to trade my guns just for fun, but now I have none. Oh, look, get shot by a bear, but I don't care. I got a 10mm. Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Watch you go outside every time.